Throughout history, man has always engaged in war. Despite a desire for peace, many states and people continue to resort to armed conflict, leading too often to death and suffering. Henri Dunant, a true pioneer of modern humanitarian work, transformed a wildly ambitious dream into reality. To uphold a measure of humanity in armed conflict by persuading states to sign up to the First Geneva Convention in 1864. Today, and for the past half-century, the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement has continued the visionary work of Dunant. To protect and assist the civilian and military victims of armed conflict and internal violence. This is the mission of the ICRC. To visit prisoners of war and civilian detainees. To trace people reported missing. To re-establish family links. To provide water, food, healthcare and shelter. To spread knowledge of humanitarian law and to ensure it is applied. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War, the neutral and independent humanitarian work of the ICRC has faced new challenges. The task is colossal. The path, chaotic. But the commitment and motivation of the teams are there for all to see. Whatever the situation, it's necessary to act quickly and to make the right choices. Over the last 3 years, wars and natural disaster have affected millions of people across the world. What has been the response? To show the work of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, we've chosen 7 contexts. The conflict in Darfur, the war in Iraq, Nepal, Yemen, the tsunami in Southeast Asia, the situation in Chechnya, and the earthquake in Pakistan. Since the start of the conflict in Darfur in 2003, more than 1 million people have had to leave their homes and their way of life and settle in temporary camps. In order to help the victims, the ICRC, together with the Sudanese Red Crescent and numerous national societies, has launched a massive aid operation. Faced with enormous logistical difficulties on the ground, they've had to find new ways of reaching the most isolated rural communities.
No, actually, once that we have a room like this, clean, we don't find that this is too primitive. I guess it's all relative. But the thing is that in some areas we will have to take our own tent, and then we may find that it's a very hot day and it's extremely uncomfortable to be working in that environment. These patients cannot be transferred from here because of political, military conditions and circumstances. So if they don't get the attention on the spot, they get no attention whatsoever.
In Darfur, the persistent fighting and looting has shattered the economy and disrupted local farming. In order to limit the number of people displaced in the camps, the ICRC tries to help the villagers on the ground. It provides seeds and agricultural tools, as well as veterinary care for their animals, and sets up watering holes for their livestock. For without camels and cattle, what are the chances of these rural communities surviving? The war in Iraq has gone on for 3 long years. The humanitarian situation is critical, and the fate of the civilian population continues to get worse. Their needs are growing, particularly in the field of healthcare. But it's more and more difficult and dangerous to work in Iraq.
You know, if one accident happens, one person is killed, one operator, everybody goes, and the station is down. And this produces half of the water for Baghdad.
Vache Arslanian, logistics coordinator for the ICRC, was killed in crossfire on the 8th of April 2003 in Baghdad.
We were extremely shocked by the death of our colleague Vache, above all because he'd been working all day for the medical and water and habitat teams, mostly loading generators and water packs. I myself had left an hour before the tragedy. He was still loading the generators in order to send them next day to Medical City. Seeing that he had worked so hard that day and losing him so tragically was a big shock to the whole team and of course to our Iraqi colleagues.
Since the start of the war in 2003, the ICRC has lost 5 co-workers.
I think it's important to stress and to underline that the ICRC has been directly targeted in Iraq on several opportunities. I'm referring, of course, first of the bombing of the ICRC delegation in October 2003, as well as other direct attacks against ICRC personnel. Our priority nowadays in Iraq is definitely to continue what we call our protection activities. More concretely, it means that we are continuing our visit of persons deprived of their freedom, as well as also developing different means in order to reestablish, to favor, to reestablish family links between a person deprived of their freedom and their relatives, their families, whether in Iraq or abroad.
Although forced to scale back its operations, the ICRC has decided to remain in Iraq. Its willingness to face the daily challenges on the ground has been strengthened by the active presence of the Iraqi Red Crescent, with whom the ICRC works in various parts of the country. The armed conflict in Nepal has lasted for 9 years and has already cost the lives of more than 10,000 Nepalese. The fighting between government forces and the Communist Party of the Nepalese Maoists has hit local people hard. The priority for the ICRC is to carry out its protection activities, in particular visiting those detained as a result of the conflict. These visits allow the delegates to assess the treatment and conditions of detention of the prisoners. At the same time, they also enable the detainees to maintain links with their families. These family links are secured by the Nepalese Red Cross, which has a countrywide network. Based in Pokhara, the second biggest town in the country, this representative of the Nepalese Red Cross regularly travels several hours by motorbike to deliver a Red Cross message. This is often the only link between those detained and their families.
So I have to go. See you next time. Nice day.
In Yemen, the ICRC is also active in re-establishing family links and ensuring that Red Cross messages are delivered to those Yemenis separated from their loved ones. The Yemeni Red Crescent plays an essential role in forwarding messages from Yemeni families